I recently read this book, The End of Your Life Book Club. It's a memoir by Will Schwalbe where he talks about the last couple of years of his mom's life. Marianne Schwalbe passed away in 2009, but before that, she was a force of nature. In fact, I wish I would have had the opportunity to know her. She spent her life serving people and loving people. She did everything. She worked as far as from like working in upper level administration at prestigious universities to working and serving people who really did not have a voice to advocate for themselves. She advocated for them, refugees in particular. She traveled around the world. She served in refugee camps in other countries. And then even after she got back home, she advocated, she stayed in touch and advocated for them when she was home. Just a remarkable person. And then even in the last months of her life, she refused to just give up, to lay down and die, as she continued to live until she just and serve until she just really possibly could not any longer. But so when I read this book, I was tempted to say that this is really a book about life, because it was about her life and the way she lived life to the fullest and was very intentional about the way she lived. And in fact, I couldn't help but notice that the word life stands out. It's in red. So I thought maybe that really was intentional. This book, The End of Your Life Book Club, is called that because it talks about, Will Schwalbe talks about the times that he went with his mom for treatment and about the books that they talked about, the books that they shared, the thoughts that they shared. And it really gave him, reading books together, gave him the opportunity to talk with her about her past and the things that were important to her and why she liked the books that she liked. And so it's called The End of Your Life Book Club because it really was a book club for two people who were reading together and sharing life together. I was tempted to go through and write down the titles of all the books that they read because they read some really, really good books. But then I realized you really don't even have to do that, because in the back of the book there is an appendix that lists all of the books that they talk about in this book. And gosh, I don't even know. There's probably 100 of them, maybe not, but there are a bunch. But really, it's not that I wanted to go through and just read all of the books that they talked about. It really inspired more in me the idea of reading more carefully. I've always been an avid reader and I've always read pretty good books. But you know, even as a child, my mom worked in a library and you could find me holed up somewhere in a corner reading a book, and to this day I keep a stack of books beside my bed that I'm pouring through. And in all of those times of reading, I have learned that there are really two types of books. There's one, and this has certainly had a place in my life, and I would say sort of mindless reading, where you kind of read as a way to turn off your mind, a way to turn off your brain. And I've find myself reading those kinds of books, when times are really stressful or you're just busy or you're tired, like when you have babies or toddlers or when things are stressful at work. You read those kinds of books like sitting down. It's kind of like sitting down at night and watching a TV series, just a way to turn off your brain. But then there's another kind of reading, and that's the kind of where you're reading books that actually require something of you, that elicit a response in you. And those are the kinds of books that I feel like I want to sit down with a notebook and a pen and just write down my thoughts as I'm reading. My thoughts, write down quotes, things that I'm hearing, just those little nuggets of wisdom. I heard recently there was a survey done of octogenarians where they were asked, what are the things that you loved about your life? And then also, what are some of the things you regret? And one of the things that many octogenarians said that they regretted is that they did not take the time to reflect on things. We can have so many rich experiences in our life, lives. But if we don't stop and take the time to reflect about them and think about them, then that really a lot of that is lost. We lose a lot of it. And I would say it's the same way with a book. I can read a really wonderful book, but if I don't stop and think about it and reflect on it and say, what does this call me to? What sort of action does this call me to? Then I lose a lot of that. And unfortunately, while I know that I've wanted to do that, I've never been very good about sitting down with a pad of paper and pen and just writing down my thoughts. So this is my goal for the year. I want to not necessarily read more books, although I will. I'm going to read a lot of books this year, but I want to, more significantly, I want to read with that notebook and that pen and to write down my thoughts. My goal actually is to read 52 books this year, a book a week. But again, more significantly, it's about writing and thinking as I'm reading. The other part of that goal is to every Sunday make a YouTube video about that process, about my reflection, not a book review, but about a video about what these books are inspiring in me and what kinds of questions are they answer, or more importantly, what kinds of questions do they evoke. So I should make it clear, I am not a YouTuber. In fact, this whole process is very intimidating to me. I've never made a YouTube video. So, but hopefully this will get easier for me, and by the end I'll feel much more comfortable by the end of the year making videos than I do right now. It's really a way to just hold me accountable, to be sure that I'm actually doing this, and honestly to develop a little discipline in myself and to get more comfortable with this process of technology and YouTube type things. So next Sunday, I will post a video about this book. This is going to be the first book I read. It is Crossing to Safety by Wallace Stegner. And this actually happens to be the first book that Will Schwalbe mentions in his memoir. And again, it's not that I just want to go through and read all of the books that he mentioned, but this is a book that I actually have read before. I read this a number of years ago, and while I don't remember all of the details of it, I do know that I remember thinking that this was a really, really good book. And in fact, there are points in the scenes or images from the book that bring themselves back into my mind. They replay themselves at certain times in my life, and it's one that I think is worth rereading. And Will Schwalbe, even at the beginning of his book, he talks about he was in the publishing industry years ago in the earlier part of his career, and he talks about at times he liked to ask booksellers what are their favorite books, and Crossing to Safety is one that was frequently mentioned. So again, I think this is a book that can be worth reading again, and so this is going to be the book that I read this week, and I will post a video about reading this and about my thoughts on reading it. Before I wrap up this video, I do want to come back to this one, because I said at the beginning of this video that I felt like it was really more a book about life. And it is on one hand, but I have to acknowledge that it is also a book about dying and about the process of dying and losing someone that is dying, someone that you love. And that was meaningful to me, because in the last 3 years I have lost both of my parents, my mom, my dad, and my mother-in-law, my wonderful mother-in-law who I loved. And so I guess I sort of wished that I had read that book earlier, or even read it as I was walking through that and struggling with my parents as they were going through their last weeks of life. One thing he says is, and this is a quote, he said, "I was learning that when you're with someone who is dying, you may need to celebrate the past, live the present, and mourn the future all at the same time." And I could not say that better. I thought that was so true. I found myself torn between all of those different things, really celebrating the lives that I'll speak about my dad since he lived with us, and I really did walk through that with him. But celebrating his life and the people that he touched in the years that he was here on the earth, and still trying to live in the present and talk about current events and things like that, and things that are going on right here and right now, but also grieving and mourning the future, the people that will never have the opportunity to know him, the fact that he'll never meet my grandchildren or whatever. Um, so I guess if I'd read this at the time, I would have known that, that really, the fact that he put his finger on that was very helpful and meaningful to me. He did talk about the fact that Mrs. Schwalbe's grandchildren, the youngest ones, wouldn't have the chance to really know her. But something he said that I found very intriguing is that books can help connect past generations with present generations and even with future generations. Her grandchildren will be able to read the books that were significant to her and be able to experience and see places and events through common eyes. And that's interesting to me, and certainly we do know that books do connect people. I think that's why we have book clubs. It gives people the opportunity to really ask questions and to find out, why did you like this book, or why did you like this section particularly, and what did this mean to you? And so, yeah, books help connect us with other people, but they also really help connect us with ourselves. As Mrs. Schwalbe had commented, they help us to ask of ourselves, what is important? How do I want to live? What are going to be the values of my life? What kinds of decisions am I going to make about my future and the way I want to treat people? And so those are the kinds of questions, I guess, that I'm going to be asking this year. And I would be so honored if you would join me. By the way, my name is Michelle, and this year I'm going to be reading 52 books and posting videos about that experience, and I hope to see you again. Thanks for watching.